Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm joined by Jessica, the host of the Tales of the Force podcast, to discuss the sixth episode from Skeleton Crew titled Zero Friends Again. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Also, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost conversation. Hey everybody, welcome back to another installment of Forest Ghost Conversations. I'm thrilled to welcome another newcomer to the Forest Ghost Conversations campfire. That is, of course, our guest this week, who is Jessica from the Tales of the Force podcast, a wonderful, positive show that I hope many of you check out afterwards after listening to this episode, of course, where we break down episode 6 from Skeleton Crew titled Zero Friends Again, a wonderful look at particularly KB and friendship and just the growth and overall origin, I will say, as we talk about in this episode, of the Skeleton Crew and how they fully form into this band of heroes that we're now on this journey with as they embark upon the third act, per se, of Skeleton Crew, the show itself. So before we get into that conversation, I just want to run through a bit of the news in the Star Wars and Lucasfilm adjacent galaxy that's happened over the past week. And because this is like the middle ground of the holiday season when this episode comes out, this podcast episode, also the episode of the Skeleton Crew, which came out on New Year's Eve. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to 2025. Holy cow. There wasn't a whole lot of like new news announcements, right? There's a lot to look forward to in 2025. You got Star Wars Celebration in Tokyo. You got Andor Season 2 coming out. You got Star Wars Visions Volume 3 is coming out. A ton of books, comics. High Republic, I think, may or may not be wrapping up this year. I can't remember if that's exact or if it's 2026 that kind of closes out. But more of that content is coming, and I gotta imagine there's a lot more up the sleeves of everybody that hasn't even been touching the surface of what is coming out yet. So a lot to look forward to on that front. From Force Ghost Conversations, of course, you can still expect weekly episodes all about the fun and the wacky and the adventure of everything Star Wars and Lucasfilm adjacent properties. We got 50th anniversary of one of my favorite films, Jaws, coming up in the summertime, so you can expect some content around that. Also, there's a new Jurassic Park. Jurassic World Rebirth is coming out in July, and maybe we'll do some deep dives into the Jurassic Park franchise as we get into the summer season. So be on the lookout for that, as well as, again, great stuff coming for 20th anniversary. Revenge of the Sith comes out in May. December sees 10-year anniversary of The Force Awakens. So many fun things and big anniversaries coming up for the Star Wars galaxy. And we're also going to be going to hopefully 2 cons this year, looking at HalseyCon here in Orlando, as well as Destination D23, which will also be here in Orlando. So we'll be boots on the ground for those conventions, and we're going to do something for Star Wars Celebration at home, kind of similar to what we did in London. We'll just see how this all plays out as we kind of have this fun and fun endeavor for us at home as best we can. I don't know. We're figuring it out. We're gonna look ahead to that. April's fastly approaching. But a lot to look forward to. I'm very excited for the continued fun and adventures and growth that we're going to have here on Force Ghost Conversations. And thank you all for coming along the ride here. So again, sorry, we got a little bit of news for this week. We did want to acknowledge the passing of Gold Leader Angus McInnes. Who we actually we didn't really meet, like interact with and say hi to, but we did see him a few months ago in October at ICCC in Nashville, and had a wonderful panel with Dennis Lawson and I'm forgetting off the top of my head the actor who played Biggs Darklighter. So just that was a great to you just hear a bunch of guys talk about memories from the original trilogy, and of course he had the specific role of coming back for a little bit for Rogue One, which he talked about during that panel a little bit too. So sad to see him go and hear about his passing. So I think hope everyone just kind of keeps him and his family in your thoughts over the next couple of days here. And go rewatch A New Hope and Star Wars Rebels, and the character of Gold Leader lives on. Yeah, that is all the news that we had for this week in the Star Wars and Lucasfilm Jason Galaxy. And of course, on the other side of the short break here, we'll be back with Jessica talking about episode 6 from Skeleton Crew, Zero Friends Again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations. The Skeleton Crew keeps on skeleton crewing. I think that's a phrase I'm just going to start using from now on. It's been an awesome show, and of course, we are here to continue our deep dive conversations into all things Skeleton Crew and the piratey goodness that it invokes. And of course, we have a brand new guest on the Force Ghost Conversations show for you this week. Of course, we have Jessica from Tales of the Force here. Jessica, welcome to Force Ghost Conversations, and how are you doing?
Well, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to come on and talk about Skeleton Crew. I always love coming on and talking about the new Star Wars projects because it's not like a huge part of what I do. So
Yeah.
I love getting to have these conversations too. And I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk some Star Wars.
Well, I am thrilled to chat Star Wars too. And before we get into like the meat of this episode, episode 6, titled Zero Friends Again, I want to alert our listeners at home, if you haven't listened to Zero Friends Again, the 6th episode with Skeleton Crew, you pause this episode now and go watch it, because we're going to dive into all things spoilery. So you've been forewarned. But before we get into the again the meat of this conversation, the true, all the trash crabs, all the all the things, the wacky, the wild, I want to start with like your level of anticipation coming into Skeleton Crew. I know they've been like describing it, when they were just talking about it and marketing it, as this kind of like quote unquote Amblin like adventure. What does that mean to you, and what does that come to, like, what comes to your mind when you hear that phrase? I've just been kind of asking all of our guests this kind of lead off question to start here, because I feel like it means something different to everybody. And Jessica, I want to hear what this phrase means to you.
Honestly, this is like the worst answer. I don't really know. I didn't really life
Honestly,
was
that's the best answer we've gotten.
life sometimes gets crazy, and so I've had a lot going on this year, and especially like this fall, I guess, before
Hmm.
winter, and so I just kind of um, came into it with really no expectations
Yeah.
and not a lot of thoughts, actually. Just excited to get a
Yeah.
new Star Wars project and excited about kind of a few of the things that I knew about it. And I mean, that was kind of the extent of it. I kind of just came into it just excited to watch a new Star Wars show and it be around the holidays and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
It was the escapism that you needed when it was there
Yes,
for you.
always, always. And I also loved that it was gonna be about kids too. Like, I
Yeah.
was excited about that aspect of it,
I
so.
think so too. Like, I'll full disclosure, we love the Acolyte on this show,
Mhm,
but the
mhm.
conversation that surrounded it was full of vitriol. Let's
Yes.
put it lightly. Whether you liked it, whether you hated it, it was exhausting to talk
Yes,
about. At
yes,
least
yes.
in my friend groups, it was fun to talk about. But online, the conversation was, uh, I gotta throw a question out and we'll see what happens. You'll send out a tweet or Instagram or something, and then the comments will start a coming,
Yeah.
and then it's dealing with that. So like this is for at least for like my mental health. This has been a true like gem of a show for that, because I just throw something out there on the internet and people are like, I love Neil. And then other people comment, I love Neil too. And that's just been so refreshing, especially heading into the season where it's like, all right, the 9 to 5 job has been dragging on. We're at the holiday break here. I just want to relax a little bit. And oh boy, Skeleton Cruise on Tuesday nights. This is perfect. And it sounds like it's been that wonderful escape for you too on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've enjoyed every episode, so
Good,
it's
good, good.
yeah, yeah.
Has there been a character that's been, like, your favorite so far of the crew that you're like, "Man, I can't wait for them to come back on screen again?"
Well, I mean, obviously, I love Neil like everyone else,
Mhm.
but outside of that, which is interesting because of this episode, but I love KB, like, I love
Yeah.
her,
Okay.
and so, yeah, I would say, I mean, Neil is wonderful, love Neil, obviously, a huge supporter like everybody else.
Yeah, you're part of Neil Nation.
Yeah, of course, but I don't know, I really like KB a lot, so
Well, this is the episode for you.
yeah.
Part of the KB crew. I don't know what
I don't
the
know, I
fandom
don't
is
know.
going to self-title themselves in that front here, but, hold the KB thoughts because
Of
spoiler alert, we may
course.
be coming to that question a bit
Yeah,
later on here
yeah.
in this conversation. So, getting into episode 6 itself, titled Zero Friends Again, and it kinda ties into KB, the KB of it all. But just coming off the kind of cliffhanger episode of last week in a way. Um, did you expect this episode to play out as it did when that episode ended? And I'm sure a lot of us, you're like, your brain automatically goes, what's going to happen next week? I wonder. And then you start figuring out the pieces in your head, perhaps, and like, okay, it could go this way, it could go this way. Did it go any of the ways that you particularly expected it to?
I mean, I think in my mind, I thought it can either go to where kind of like that, to where it is, like you expect with a big cliffhanger and a lot of action that it's gonna keep going, or it's gonna be kind of like, we're gonna slow it down a little bit and,
Hmm.
like, get a little bit more character development and then go back to the action,
Yeah.
and so again, I just really and truly have just watched this show and gone into the show trying to not have like any expectations of
Hmm.
like what the next episode's gonna be, what they're gonna do, what it's gonna be like. And so I've just kind of been along for the ride, honestly.
This is the greatest approach ever. I love it.
I've just learned with a lot of things, like especially Star Wars, that's
Hmm.
just, I don't know. I've found it to be the best way to go about it because, especially as adults, like I think as a kid, when you approach Star Wars, it's just fun. It's Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like, the older you get, you might get a little bit more into the lore or the kind of nuts and bolts of different things, but
Hmm.
it's just like it's fun and it's an adventure. And there's lightsabers and there's the force and
Hmm.
there's these incredible pilots and people, fighting for what's right or what, all those things. And then as you get older, and if you kind of stay into the world and you learn more about it, you read books, you read the comics, you whatever it is, um, you get more knowledgeable about like the behind, not behind the scenes, but more than just like watching like the
Yeah.
movies or the shows. And while that's wonderful, and I totally obviously nerd out on all things like Star Wars, but at the same time, it can set you up to have unrealistic expectations of
Ooh, yes.
things,
Oh, yeah.
because you get your personal like fan theory of like what you want to happen or how you want something to go about
Mhm.
or what you want to happen to these characters that you love, which is 100% fair, and I think it's totally okay to do that, but it's just hard when um in a world of making content, we have to remember at the end of the day this is creative and it's art, and so
Yes.
everybody's interpretation is going to be a little bit different, and we now have
Yeah.
fans making Star Wars. So um I don't know, like, I've just kind of learned to
Mm.
kinda sit back and kind of view it in a sense of kind of from the eyes, like, of a child. I'm
Mhm.
not saying don't critique, and I'm not saying, like, healthily, like, debate and have all those things. I'm never saying that, like, that's fun too, but, like, I don't know, it's just been good, I think, for me and my mental
Yeah.
health and different things to kind of, I don't know, just watch the show just to have fun and watch Star Wars.
This is awesome. I love this approach, and frankly, it sounds like, perhaps you're implementing a phrase that we like to say here often, which is "speculate responsibly," right?
Yeah,
Like, have
yeah.
fun with your theories and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, be okay with what you get.
Mhm.
And don't because like you said, everything in the expanded universe perhaps, or what was once canon, what's now legends, and now, whatever it is, don't box people into a corner just because that's what you think is the only way that a Jedi should act, or a pirate should act, or a person existing in the Star Wars community should act. Right now,
Yeah.
because of Skeleton Crew, we have suburbs. We have, and we a little bit of going to an office and going to work and dealing with your supervisor. Um, and going to school and
Yeah.
going and taking tests and dealing with like job placement, like probably some of the most real world things ever is now in Skeleton Crew. So it's just, I think that's a really healthy approach to, and it sounds like you're like, all right, Tuesday at night, 9 o'clock, turn it on, watching it. That was a great show.
Yeah.
And then next week, Tuesday, 9 o'clock comes. Let's see what they got for me this week. Turning it on. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Awesome.
I mean, it's hard because it's like there's more things that I'm gonna have higher, I don't know, expectations to.
Hmm.
And I've said this before, but this is a show that like, and I don't mean this in any negative way, but it's like a project that nobody asked for, you know?
No, I mean,
And
it's true.
and so like when you get something that is that way, it's easy to have less expectations.
Yeah.
When you have something that is highly anticipated, that is about a character that is like so well, like the Ahsoka show, or the
Right.
Kenobi show, or
Oh,
different
sure.
things like that, there can be a lot of expectations because there are years and years and years and years of information and love for that character.
Mhm.
And so this is brand new and it's fun and it's, yeah, yeah. So I've enjoyed it.
Which in some ways is almost unfair to those shows because they
It
are
can
getting,
be.
like,
Yeah.
put into that box of, like, well,
Yeah.
Kenobi can't leave Tatooine. How's that po He's
Yeah.
supposed to be this old grump on a desert because John Jackson Miller wrote this book, and I loved it so much. It's like, yeah, I love
Yeah.
that book too, but you can also have him leaving
Yeah.
and having
Yeah.
this adventure with Leia and learning about himself and healing over
I
this
mean,
traumatic event.
everything from
Right.
a certain point of view, right? Like these are
That's right.
legends, these are tales. Like, who knows? Like it could have a different interpretation. And, you know, we're just getting it from a different perspective in the world of Star Wars because not everything, even in life, is that black and white,
That's right.
So
100%. 100%. Here, here, agree. Well, Jessica, I will say, I did not have that same philosophy coming into this week in some degree. I immediately saw last week's episode and I was watching it with, of course, Christmas Eve watching that episode. I was watching it with my brother-in-law as like a 7-month-old baby is in another room with a huge white noise sound machine on, and we have it on like the lowest volume possible that we can kind of hear it, but also can't really hear it. So the subtitles are on. As soon as Jod got that lightsaber, and that's kind of how it ended, I turned to him and I go, man, Jod's got this nuclear weapon now. He's going to like start going crazy on Lanupa. He's going to leave the kids behind. All this is going to happen. And then as soon as this episode starts, Jod comes up from the sewers basically, and they're all there. The remaining pirates that were sent to kidnap him are right there, and is like, "Oh, well, that idea immediately went out the window."
and
Oh,
he's just like has all of the stuff on him.
yeah,
He's
he's
like,
decked
here are
out
all
in
the
chains.
jewels.
Like, of course, he's a pirate at the end of the day. Why did I think otherwise? I thought he'd go off on this grand crusade. You're is immediately rushing to get to Aden, leaving all the kids behind, and then it did happen to some degree. But the whole Jod narrative, I thought of this episode just from the start was like, holy cow, how is he trumped already? This guy, I thought this guy with his lightsaber was going to be unbeatable, and turns out, no, no, he just
Yeah.
still a pirate at heart and weighed himself down in gold and all that stuff. It kind of reminded me a little bit. I don't know if Jessica, if you've seen the 1999 film The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser, and there's a character named Benny at the end of the film who is trying to escape, but still has this like innate nature to like have wealth and gold, and he's stuck in this like room of treasure, and kind of that becomes his tomb because he's not able to
Yeah.
leave it. And I'm like, that's kind of Jod in some sense.
Mhm.
He is just so hooked on to getting this cash and the treasure, when like the real treasure perhaps is the relationships he's making along the way, and that these kids are the only people that have ever trusted him seemingly in the last like 40 years of his life. He constantly just keeps getting put down, or not necessarily put down, but like he keeps letting himself down because of
Yeah.
his own innate nature to like, I need money, and I'm a scrappy guy, and I need to find my way out, rather than working together with these kids who are of good nature and good heart. It's like
Yeah.
polar opposites of each other.
Yeah. And I think the Force isn't done with him either, so
Ooh,
I
yes.
think he has some serious, life lessons that he's making choices and,
Yeah. Oh, he's making some choices, all right.
you know?
I like how, like, 33 was his, like, backup plan too. Like, he didn't even think to use the lightsaber, he's like, "Oh, you got me. 33, where are you at?"
Yeah.
And
I
then
mean, he
he
probably
just
doesn't
gets
wanna
immediately
give it
taken
away
out.
either. He probably doesn't wanna I mean, I'm sure with everything, like, in the timeline that they're in,
Ooh.
wielding a lightsaber right now would be, like, cause a lot of attention
Ooh,
to
that's an interesting
come to you,
theory.
so,
Yeah, oh, wow. Wow,
he's
that
probably
is
gonna
a
keep that hidden for a while.
ooh, that's a good point. I'd even consider that possibility of, like, oh, maybe they call, like, have Luke on speed dial, right? He
Yeah,
perhaps he knew those X-Wings were perhaps chasing them down and maybe would catch up to them at some point, which they do in this episode. We see the X-Wings come back, and they have that little, like, space battle with some of the pirates there. Um, ooh, that's a
I don't know.
that's a good nugget to chew on there. Huh, maybe John's smarter than we give him credit for. At least
I
I did.
mean, he might. I think he's just like, "Well, I can't use this right now," you know?
Mm, mm.
Are they gonna believe the kids that they found a lightsaber, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Also, it's probably like in a way, it might be the greatest treasure that was down there.
Yeah,
I don't know how much gold is worth in Star Wars. Clearly, it's if the old Republic money is kind of seemingly in a gold, it must have some high value. But
yeah,
I would imagine lightsabers with a kyber crystal are probably both rare and super valuable because of its status as a weapon. And maybe he's like, "Don't take it from me." Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
See,
I
we've worked through this thought already here.
don't
This is fun. I like where we're going with this one.
know.
Um, but let's get into the KB of it all. You said this is a character that was your favorite, perhaps even before this episode, but I think certainly, without putting words in your mouth, after this episode, definitely cemented herself as one of your favorites, if not your favorite, amongst all the entirety of the Skeleton Crew. So I think people describe this episode as the one where KB is the main focus. We've kind of had a Neil one. Wim's kind of been the main protagonist, I would say, of the series so far. Fern's had her moments too, particularly I would say in the supervisor's tower in quote unquote the Neil episode in some ways. So let's dive into the KB. Like, what about our character did you like the most, perhaps, uh, before this episode, perhaps what stood out to her, her character, her motives, her what she stands for. What about KB really like sung for you?
I think as a child, I can really resonate with her a lot. Um, she's not the most outspoken, and
Hmm.
like clearly has like befriended someone that is more outspoken
Hmm.
and um, is a sense of comfort. I think that can like protect her if she
Yeah.
feels like she is in like a bad spot, even though I think Fern can kind of be a bully a little bit, and
Yeah.
I don't think it comes from, like, maybe, like, a bad place because she's, like, trying to protect herself,
Hmm.
and that's the only way she knows how. Um, but, she has her, like, cybernetics too, so, like, we know that
Hmm.
there's something different going on with her. And I think as someone who, like, I've been very open and shared a lot about, like, my mental health journey
Hmm.
and I also have chronic migraine. And
Hmm.
so, even though those aren't necessarily like physical um, illnesses, I think I don't know, like, I love characters that, not that she's like an underdog, but like
Yeah.
there are things that she is facing that kind of some people would like count her out, or like when
Mm.
she said, like, especially in this episode, like, I didn't want to tell you kind of like what my limitations are. And
Yeah.
like, I have so been there where I don't want to tell people, like, if I do this, it's going to trigger a migraine, or if I do
Right.
this, it's probably I'm going to be like depressed tomorrow, or it's going to pique
Yeah.
my anxiety, or like whatever. And so, or, you know, with ADHD, like, this is going to
Sure.
be a hard task for me to do, or this is going to be something difficult. And, just being like honest with your friends ahead of time, which is normally
Mhm.
always better. But sometimes there's some shame with that,
Yeah.
that we put
Yeah.
on ourselves. And I think she felt bad that she couldn't maybe keep up um,
Mhm.
with everyone or with Fern specifically because of these things. And so I think just from the beginning, seeing her have that and knowing like her, her parents saying something about, well, she needs her medicine or like
Yeah.
different things like that. And that hasn't really been that addressed in Star Wars
No.
yet. And so I love that. And I think that especially kids watching this, like it's
Mhm.
just a whole nother layer
Mhm.
for kids to be able to see themselves, which to me is like the literal most important thing.
Yes.
Besides some of the themes that go through Star Wars that I think should like always be there personally, I think kids being able to see themselves in it and
Mm.
aspire to something. And so having someone like KB, I think is just like so wonderful to have in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah. Has your opinion of her changed at all now after seeing this episode? Has
I
she
just love
really
her
become
even
even
more
more? Yeah.
now. Like I just want to hug her. Um like again, like obviously she has like the cybernetics, so it's a little bit more of a
Yeah.
physical representation of like a a chronic illness or a differing ability, but like um it's not always visible,
Yeah,
and
of course.
so but sometimes it is. And so again, like I don't know, I just love like seeing her change and grow and being able to like tell her friend like, hey, I'm sorry, like
Yeah.
I didn't say this, and this is what's something that I go through, because I think people of all ages, that's a hard thing to deal with in the real
Yeah.
world. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I think, it's just yes anding everything that you just said there. I think this episode does a fantastic job of giving representation to a lot of people in the disabled community, and just representing them on screen in various ways, both seen and unseen. I think that you did a great job. Yeah, just talking about that here, and I really appreciated how they handled the conversation between you know I guess KB and Fern, where they just kind of have that moment where they're like, "All right, we need to talk to each other here. Like, we've had our space. We come back to it here." And you see KB being like, "I don't always want to be otherized, but like there are things that I just can't do, and I maybe I should speak up more about it, but I don't always want to speak up about it because I don't want to be seen as an like that's such a hard, complex thing that many people experience and have to deal with on a daily basis, and it's like yeah, if I do this, will I suffer consequences tomorrow? And she's like, I've been doing this for 4 days in a row now. My thing is literally corroding in the back of my head. Like I haven't had a chance to recharge or to whatever. And that translates so well into the real world, like you said, of like so many things that people experience. And then on the other side, Fern is in a way, I guess, a little bit of like an ableism conversation here, but like saying like I I don't see you for your disability, but also like I want you to be able to do things that I do, and like I'm going to challenge you and push you to do things. So it's like the push pull that a lot of people in these communities and friendships experience, where it's like, yeah, that's where the friction comes from sometimes. And I'm glad these two are good enough friends for each other that they're able to take their space. It's okay to take space from people, and but they come back to each other with level-headed minds, and they come and they have a conversation with each other, and they're like, hey, I need this from you, I need this from you, and they're able to have a great dialogue about it, which I think is something that for the 12-year-old watching this, and also the 55-year-old perhaps watching this, there's so much that we can learn from this to be better people overall. And I
Yeah.
think that this episode just cements that at the forefront. I know it's called Zero Friends Again, which is KB's biggest concern, is that like if I lose Fern as a friend, I won't have any friends. But then Wim is just quick without even hesitating. He's just like, well, you got Neil and I, and he also doesn't make a big deal of it, which I think means the world to her in many ways. But also, I think Fern doesn't have a lot of friends either.
Yeah.
So I think if she's like, if I don't have KB, I have zero friends again too.
Yeah.
So they both I'm glad that they were able to mend their friendship with each other quickly in this episode, and just grow as a team together. So any more thoughts about the KB Fern the team of it all?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important because, like, relationships, there's always, like, an ebb and flow, like any
Yeah.
kind of relationship, and so, when feelings get hurt or, like, trust is broken or someone isn't, like, truthful, I think, going to someone and saying, like, "I care about you,
Mhm.
and, like,
Mhm.
I want to figure this out, I wanna work through
Yeah.
it together, like, it might be kinda hard," and this is, like, a simple version of that, like, "Hey, I'm sorry. Hey, I'm sorry." You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
it just yeah,
it goes
exactly.
back to Neil going, "Well, have you apologized?" Have you said, like, "Please
Mhm.
don't steal my stuff?" You know?
Yeah.
Like, and so I think it is another reminder that, it doesn't have to be this big, massive thing,
Mhm.
but we can be honest with each other and we can, if everyone's coming from a good and healthy place with, like, good intentions,
Mhm.
all of us have stuff we don't realize that we're doing. And
Yeah.
sometimes it takes a good friend to point that out. And, um, thankfully, I think Fern took it well, and I think KB took it well, and they were able to kind of like move forward and grow together. And I think that's such an important lesson and such an important thing
Yeah.
to see, especially with kids. It's really, really cool. So, yeah, that's
To
the
the
only thing I think I would add.
to the kid aspect too, I am amazed at, like, the calmness that Wim had in, like, literally doing kinda like brain surgery in a way with, like, seconds to spare where, like,
Yeah,
AB may not have existed if it, like, didn't go in a second sooner. And just, like, literally creating a mold in the middle of snow, like, holy cow, what a dangerous and wild thing that may not have potentially worked. Like, there's probably a 10% success rate that that would have actually worked from ideation to completion.
yeah,
Just that was wild. I don't know. Saw that. I'm like, holy cow, what's happening here? And Wim's just like,
yeah.
fortunately, because Wim is Wim, and he's like, all right, I'll go with the flow and do this here. He makes it happen. Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so once they've mended their relationship, KB and Fern, um, I would argue, and this is my opinion here, that the group overall, the skeleton crew, has quote unquote completed their origin and are now officially in what I would say is the skeleton crew. Do you agree with that sentiment? Why or why not?
Yeah, I think so. I think that they're going to work together a lot more because there's a lot of things like out in the open that they're not kind of masking from each other.
Yeah.
They've talked more about like their families and they've talked more about like why they want to go home or why they don't want to go home.
Hmm.
They've kind of seen each other in like harder situations. And I think, again, with any kind of like relationship, that's kind of like where that's tested, when
Yeah.
something goes wrong.
Yeah.
How are you going to, as like two people or a group or whoever, like, how are you going to handle this? Are you going to make each other the enemy or are you going to tackle like the
Mm.
issue or problem at hand? And so I think it has cemented them as like all friends and all of a
Hmm.
group together. And so I'm interested to see how they kind of like move forward with the show, with the characters working together. Because I think even earlier when they were kind of stuck with Jod, they might have been able to stop him
Hmm.
if they were all working together with all of their strengths.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm interested to kind of see how this kind of shift um, takes them in the next, episodes that are left. So,
Whoa, me too. I mean, like, with 33 and Jod there in the last like 5 episodes, they were relying on them for a lot of things. Whether it be 33 for protection or Jod just for kind of navigating life in the universe. And they were kind of just like, maybe that was like the crutch that they needed to get rid of in order to become the skeleton crew.
yeah,
Was to literally separate themselves like they did at the cliffhanger of last episode. You go through a little bit of a rough patch, like, right, like any person probably would, when you're like, we've hit rock bottom, literally. We're
yeah.
amongst a trash heap with we're following trash crabs,
That
small,
were so cute.
so
I was
cute trash
obsessed.
crabs saying follow, follow, follow. That leads to this monster trash crab, which was so wonky and wild. A full stop motion character too from Tippett
Yeah,
Studios, which I thought was a fun Star Wars connection there. Meanwhile, literally, Fern is pulling Neil by rope. Basically, she's strapped to him and pulling him up this basically 90 degree incline on this rock climbing, whatever you want to call it, to get up top there.
Yeah.
And then they're stuck in this trash heap, and it's like, man, you find out who you are as people when you hit the lowest that you've ever been, and then it's from there that you can just bounce up. And boy, did this team, like you said, they came together and they escaped this trash compactor kind of thing and trash crab monster that was trying to eat them up. They pushed the button that they shouldn't have, but they trusted their instincts, and because they did that, they shedded the skin of this
I
onyx cinder, which I
know, I
thought was
loved
so
it.
visually cool, right? Like,
Yes, and it's such a good metaphor too of, like, all of them, you know?
yes,
They're
yes,
all kind of shedding this, like, layer, this external layer,
absolutely.
and, going to, like, the next level. I thought of it as, like, kind of like a butterfly coming out of, like, a cocoon,
Oh,
but,
oh
like, I was talking to
yeah.
a friend about it, and he was like, "Oh, it's like a snake or a reptile or something shedding
That's where my
skin,"
brain went too.
So yeah.
But I like the butterfly metamorphosis so much better, right? It shows a journey better than the snake metaphor does. I think just because it looked like a snake literally shedding its skin, that's the visual medium that we associate it with.
Yeah, I think either works, they're both growth, so,
It is in a way. It's the passage of time for some of them
Yeah,
and shedding that and becoming something different. But I will say I do like the butterfly more because it is like a part of a journey, right? It's like
yeah,
once you've hit the butterfly stage, you've had your caterpillar, you're in your cocoon, and then you come out. It's like a 3 act narrative in a way. And with the skeleton crew being after 6 episodes of this, we're now in the third act of this. So now they're a team, they're ready to go. Neil's piloting, Wim's, shooting stuff, and KB's doing all the like mechanical stuff, and Fern is telling them, "You being a captain, being a leader. Hey, do this, do that." Um, I think that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that idea. I think that's really excellent.
they both
And
work, so
they both do work. I will say that. Um, like you said, I'm going to echo that sentiment. I'm very excited for these next 2 episodes because again, what will this crew look like at full capacity? I think the title of a skeleton crew implies that it's like this ragtag group of people that however many people are supposed to be on a ship, right? Or a plane or something like that, whether it's like the full capacity, but a skeleton crew is like less than that. And with 4 kids who have never been outside of their home before, now piloting this ship in the galaxy, trying to find their home, fending off multiple bands of space pirates and all that stuff. I can't wait to see where they go with this journey, and I assume it's somewhere on that at and all these things. But th- I am very excited for where they go next. I've loved the journey so far, and I'm like, just give me the next episode. I can't wait.
yeah, yeah, same.
Same indeed. So on the Jod side of things, he's able to escape death basically outside of the airlock by bargaining his way into the good graces of Brutus and the members of his former crew, basically offering the treasure of At-Aten as a reward. And I found that whole like last plea kind of bargaining, what's your final say on things, kind of really interesting personally. What did you make of this addition to kind of like pirate lore within Star Wars? I don't recall if this is something we've ever seen before, whether it be Clone Wars or Rebels or anything like that when we've had run-ins with pirates. But this kind of just like this whole thing is like, oh, as pirate lore, I'm offered this turn the timer on, and until the plasma runs out, I have a chance to defend myself, and let's see what happens.
I thought it was so fun. I loved it. I love pirate things like, I mean, as a kid I was a huge fan of Pirates of the Caribbean, all those kinds of things. And I don't know, I loved it. I love that he like sang a song at some point in the
Oh, he
episode
did. That's
too. Yeah.
right.
I was like, a
Oh,
pirate song in Star Wars. This
it's
is
like,
so
yeah, we got a
fun.
sea shanty in this. Ooh,
I know. A space one, I guess. I
yeah, a
don't know.
space shanty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was just, I loved it. It just, like, reminded me of different, like, again, going back to, like, Pirates of the Caribbean, there's all these, like, and maybe written down, maybe not even written down, but these like oral rules and like
Mhm, mhm.
traditions and how things work that the pirates have, that they honor this like code, pirate code, right?
Yeah,
And so, it's kinda like getting more of the Star Wars pirate code, I guess, of
yeah,
how things kind of work, and, I don't know, I have my suspicions that he was kind of using the Force a little bit to kinda see what people were feeling and thinking,
yeah.
to, like, say what he needed to say to get different people to kind of react, how
Mhm.
they were, if someone's mind was a little bit easier to kind of get into, but so I think that was kind of like definitely in his favor,
Mhm.
because he was able to kind of use that, or use different people kind of against the argument against him. I keep saying against, but that makes
Yeah, none of
sense.
it, it worked.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just it was fun. It was just a fun, just such a pirate thing, and I was all about it. So
Yeah, I mean, I was all about it too. I thought, wow, of course they would have some, like it's basically like him walking the plank and then being like, "Do you have anything left to say for yourself?" And I think you're onto something there because they did spend I did think this when I was watching the episode, and I'm like, "Oh, they're spending a long time on this lady here that we've never seen before." And
yeah,
I'm thinking you might be onto something with like utilizing the force and manipulating it in some way to be like, "Remember the last rites kind of plea thing that I'm honored to do because of the pirate code, which is a wild thing to begin with too, for like basically space anarchists that roam and plunder and do anything they want, that they somehow have this like ethical honor code that all pirates
yeah,
are bound to until they don't want to be bound to it. Like there are rules and then they're never, it's just,
yeah,
I think he and just in listening to the back again, like Brutus is like, all right, I have nothing to lose here. We just lost time basically. If it's wrong, we throw him out the airlock. If he's right, we found out Atten. Like
yeah,
at least give him like whatever, however long it takes. Give him 3 more hours. Like what's the difference here? Realistically. So he's like, all right, fine. We'll do this. Um but yeah, Jod's Swin this he's a guy that like always weasels his way out of a situation. It looks like, and that seems to be his life up to this point. Where, but from the crumbs of his life that he's shared so far, where he's like, as a kid, I had to like fight for scraps eating, and that's kind of the life I grew up in. To the point where he became a pirate, and he's like, I'll work my way up to being a captain. It just seems like this has always been his mo, and maybe his luck's running out perhaps very soon
yeah.
here. I can't imagine that Skeleton Crew is going to be thrilled with him
Yeah.
after what he did.
No, no, yeah, yeah. We'll see. We'll
We'll
see, I
see, indeed.
guess.
So seemingly, it looks like everybody's bound for Red Atten at this point, but we got 2 episodes left, Jessica. So I
Yeah.
ask you with my last question here: where do you think the story goes next for the Skeleton Crew?
I guess it depends on if they do a second season or like, not
That's
to
a
be
great point.
like too much of a realist about it, but
Yeah.
it depends on if things get kind of wrapped up and they do a completely different story if they
Hmm.
come back for a second season, or if the next season is kind of a continuation of this. So they could end up at Atten, they could end up somewhere else, and that
Hmm.
is kind of like the next thing is, oh wait, we actually aren't going to get there, this actually isn't the coordinates or something.
Could you imagine?
So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, I have no idea. I kind of have a feeling they'll end up maybe back, but I mean,
Hmm.
it's been such a fun, um wild ride of a show that, like, I mean, they could get taken over by another group of pirates, like we literally have
True.
no idea.
There's a lot of other
I
pirates
mean,
out
I'm
there,
still crossing my fingers for some Hondo Ohnaka. I mean, but we'll see. The
aren't
show
we
has been
all?
so great even without him, but come on, we want some Hondo.
Yeah, Hondo Ohnaka, Maz Kanata could be out there
Yes.
doing some fun space
Fee
piratey
could be
stuff.
out there
Exactly.
still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All these people could be out roaming the galaxy and could all one in on the score of a lifetime at Aden. I
Yeah,
mean, I
exactly.
think Star Wars needs to release the the full nursery rhyme basically, that is that fun child's rhyme that they created for this, like they did with the music video for the Major Tom coming home, uh for Skeleton Crew. So they need, come on Lucasfilm, get on that, because I need to be humming this all day long. Yeah, I'm excited for next week. Yeah, well, possibilities are endless. Frankly, they could have another adventure on the way to Atatin. They could get to Atatin immediately. Who gets there first? Is it the pirates? Is it the skeleton crew? Could it be X-wings that have latched onto them? And
Yeah,
now the New Republic is coming to Atatin. Who is the supervisor? Is it perhaps who is um, Captain Rennet? All these questions kind of exist
yeah,
there. They deliberately did not show his face. I don't know if that was because they didn't want to cast an actor to play the role, or if it's because maybe they are the supervisor on Manhattan and they've just been kind of languishing there, stealing the treasure and operating under a different circumstance for everybody, and hiding them from the rest of the Empire and the Republic. Who knows? Who
yeah.
knows? This is I think, the speculating is sometimes the best part of the lead up to a new show, and then when you get it, you're
It
like, "Oh,
is.
that's where this is going."
Yes, it is fun. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's always fun
Well,
to
speaking of
think
fun
about.
things, Jessica, this has been such a fun chat with you here. Where can the folks find you online, and particularly where can they find Tales of the Force? And if you have a minute, explain what your podcast is because it is slightly different than like a
Yeah.
discussion podcast about Star Wars. So I'm a big fan of it, and go ahead
Well,
and
thank
give us
you.
the elevator pitch on it.
Yeah, so Tales of the Force is it's a Star Wars podcast for fans by a fan about fans' personal Star Wars stories. So kind of like how I shared a little bit about KB and how I resonated
Hmm.
with her. It's kind of like that, but it is full episodes about people sharing like how Star Wars has impacted their life or what it means to them. And it can be super deep or it can be a little bit just more fun and lighthearted. It just depends on what each guest kind of how they want to approach it and what they want to talk about. So yeah, it's been so fun doing it. I started it's 2025 now, which is crazy. So I started March of 2024. And yeah, it's been fun. I have had to take a little bit of a break because of the holidays and a lot of things going on, but I have a few more episodes that I recorded earlier in the fall that will still come out before I take another small break to kind of regroup for, I think I'm going to do like a season 2, I think is how I'm going to set it up.
Sure.
And kind of I don't know, just like I don't know, let the creative juices flow, kind of think about how I want to structure it for the next round of things, and get things kind of organized. So there's a couple more episodes that will come out. And then I'll take another little bit of a break while I kind of finalize some stuff and get it back up and going and all the things.
That is awesome. I
Yeah, and
can't wait
it's
to see your journey. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh, thank you. No, no, you're good. I was just gonna say the audio versions are anywhere you listen to podcasts, and then the video versions are on the YouTube channel. So you can
Perfect.
subscribe, follow on Instagram, Threads. At the moment, still TikTok, and then I'm kind of looking to see like what other
What's
um,
next?
platforms. I don't know. So yeah, but that's where it is right now, and it's all just Tales of the Force. So
Awesome,
yeah.
awesome, and a big fan of your show
Well,
and the
thank you.
positivity that it spreads, about the galaxy far, far away and the people that make it up. And I think it's great that everyone has a unique story and
Yeah,
a way that they got into Star Wars and what it means to them and how it's impacted them over the years. And I think that's just awesome that you're giving people the space to share their story, tell their truth, and it just I think by doing that they learn a lot more about themselves than they've ever probably thought of before, and you give them the space and the platform by which to do that. So I think that's awesome, and thank you for doing that.
well, thanks.
Just as a fan of Star Wars and a fan of your work, so I can't wait to see where your journey goes in the
Yeah,
next phase, season 2. That's exciting.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and
It
of
is.
course,
It's crazy,
yeah,
but it's fun.
super super crazy, yeah. But and of course, this has been a fantastic conversation. We'll definitely have you back on again in the near
Thank
future. Here, we'll
you.
find.
Yeah.
I got a whiteboard here. I got tons of ideas for future
There you
episodes, of
go.
course, with conversations. So we'll find a way to get you back on sooner than later. So thank you, Jessica, again for coming
Well,
on the show,
thank
and to
you.
the audience at home, thank you so much for listening. Again, we'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Skeleton Crew episode 7, whatever that may be titled. We're here for the ride and the journey, so I hope you continue to stay with us for this fun adventure. And again, if you want to continue the conversation, we're on X, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, Threads. Just search Force Ghost Conversations. We'll be there in some capacity. So until next week, may the Force be with you and take care.